and his name is Dr. Rohan. He's a
Hi,
wonder,
folks.
yeah, and he's a dear friend, mentor, and he's a very established speaker, author. He's really big in the personal development space. He's helped literally thousands of people around the world. So maybe over to you, Dr. Rohan. Maybe you could share with us, the audience here in Singapore and Asia, a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Daniel, and hi, everybody watching this, whether you're watching it live or you end up watching the live recorded version of the live. Apologies about the setting. I'm in the process of my home being renovated, so my offices here are full of personal belongings in the process of storage. So you can see there's lots of things going on in the background there. But actually, globally, there's lots of things happening as well. And I think this is a really appropriate time to do this call, Daniel. So just briefly, just so everyone knows how I know Daniel. I've known Daniel for about 8 years now, I think, Daniel, from memory.
That's right.
We met in the process of me being over in Singapore. My relationship with Singapore started 20 years ago. So as a
Wow.
consultant civil engineer, coming back through from work I was doing in Australasia, spending a little bit of time in Singapore, coming back to here. And I've watched Singapore grow and expand in such a massive way in these last 20 years. And that expansion has included, of course, the growth of the expatriate business model, a lot of international companies coming into Singapore, which has obviously elevated your status in terms of your earnings and the way the structure is over there. But I think we should address this subject today, which is that dynamic is changing radically. And I think what's happening globally is going to have an impact on Singaporeans. So I think it's being mindful of that, Daniel, as you already, when we first met, we met because I was talking about real estate on a big
That's
stage,
right.
I think 2 or 3, 4,000
Mm,
people. And you made that commitment back then to get into real estate. And as a result
yeah.
of that, have created this strong passive income for you and the family, which is great.
Yes.
So my journey
Absolutely.
started before that. My background, originally my father is Sri Lankan, I should say. He passed away when I was younger, had a stroke at 36. My father's first stroke was 27, another one at 29, another major stroke
Wow.
at 36, which paralyzed him, went blind, and then by the time he got to 46, and I'm
Mm,
54, so I'm nearly 10 years on from when my father passed away.
wow.
I was only 13 years of age at the time, so I watched my mum work very hard, and I know you know how passionate I am. I think having watched my mum work very hard, having lost my father, I realized there is no security in a job, and it takes
Mm,
sometimes, a personal situation to turn our world upside down. We've got a
yeah.
global situation which is turning our worlds upside down.
It's so true.
So it's true, isn't it? I mean, we're used to seeing things on television, and we're used to hearing somebody had a heart attack, somebody lost their job. This is much, much deeper.
Yeah.
Uh,
And what's
so the
interesting, you
part,
mentioned about your mom and working really hard, and I think that's something a lot of people in Asia would relate to because
oh my
they
gosh,
just spend
absolutely
so much time at work, and at the same time they're very good at saving. But sometimes it may not be a personal, a difficulty like a heart attack or something like that, but something like COVID that's happening, or the stock
right.
markets, losing
Yep.
20% just in a matter of days. Suddenly all of us are thrown into a situation where you're trying to figure out, okay, what are some of my next steps? For I know some people, they might be actually in a pretty good position because of good financial decisions they've done over the years, either in terms of saving aside their bonuses, but they're now wondering, and I have friends asking me because they know that I'm in this realm of financial management as well, financial mastery, financial freedom, and they say, should I buy into the stock market now?
Right.
Should I invest in REITs? But I actually just sent my friend an article that REITs in the last week, if you've been investing in REITs in the last, say, 5 years, you've lost like 30% of your money.
I
So
know. And I
what are
remember
some of
when I
your
was over in
thoughts? Yeah.
Singapore, actually, people were talking about that and saying, I don't want to come and learn to do this. I don't really need to own real estate outside Singapore. I don't, because if you remember, what I was teaching at the time and still do is UK investments. And you and your beautiful wife, Jo, were like, okay, well, can we do this? For
Mm,
those of you that don't know, Daniel's got a beautiful family. And when I first met him, that security wasn't, it was just the two of them. But
yeah.
he had this vision to build security for them in the future.
Mm,
And the career that he was in through the military, etc. There's a big tug of war when you've got to a certain level like Daniel's got, and I'm just talking about you sort of remotely because I know you as a friend. And it's a dilemma: is do I separate myself from that profession and do something completely different? And then how do other people perceive me? You know, how do I feel about that? Are they going to criticize me? Are they going to think that I'm crazy? And I went through this because when I was in 1998, I left my profession, having got a degree, a PhD. I did the whole thing, the corporate ladder. I climbed the whole thing. And I separated from that world to go into Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, from employed to self-employed. And, you know, we talk about born poor, die rich. I was born poor and I worked hard, but was still not rich. so even having climbed the corporate ladder in late 20s, similar, I guess, to your experience when we met, I had to make that separation. But my separation wasn't into property investing, which is what you did. My separation was into self-employment. I then spent years as a consultant, earning a lot of money on a daily basis. And cash is not passive income. Cash is not security. And if anyone's watching this right now in Singapore, you guys earned great, put your money in the bank where your interest rates are tiny. If you lose your jobs today, and maybe because of what's happening globally, some of the international companies don't want to bring people back to Singapore, or they want to extract themselves from Singapore, that's going to affect the top end of your market, which is going to have a knock-on effect all the way through the economy. And you can't survive on savings alone for the next 10 to 20 years, which I think is what you and Joe realized. I think, Daniel, for you, it was like, okay, I get passive income. I remember that conversation with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of Singaporeans, probably their goal is to, live in a property, work very hard, save their money, squirrel away the money, and trying to be very prudent. I think a lot of people are maybe being Asian, savings is something that they just do naturally.
Well, exactly. I mean, you're right. I go to India. My father's Sri Lankan, and it's like, Dr. O, we must put our money in the bank and buy everything for cash. And I always laugh and I say, the trouble is the rate of return you're getting in the bank is just not serving you, is it? And yours is even lower than ours.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's great that you it's not just something that's happening or unique in Singapore. I know you have taught and spoken to people all around the world. And do you see something similar happening as well?
I mean, you've been over to the UK many times. I've walked around with Daniel. I've walked around large properties and I've seen him acquire assets that produce a passive income and brought money from Singapore over, and there's some clever things. But if I go outside of the UK, Italy, France, Germany, all across Denmark, Sweden, Scandinavia. I've just come from Australia just recently, about 6 months ago. They had the same challenge there, same thing in New Zealand, South Africa. What's happening is people are realizing that actually the security of a job is not enough. And everybody says, one day I'm going to do this, one day. But the thing about born poor, die rich is by the time you get to the end, if you haven't got to that point, and rich isn't just about wealth of richness, it's about richness of health, it's about time. So when you and I talk about born poor, die rich, we're referring to this richness of life, aren't we? I think
absolutely. That's the point.
So a lot of people I meet at the moment, my last event I did in Gatwick, so I had about 50 people in Gatwick. The average age, Daniel, was probably in the region of about 45 to 50. Whereas when I came over to Singapore for the first time and did a talk where you were at, I think there's 150 people in the room. What would you say? 25, 30, 35?
Yeah.
Average age?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that we meet, the first thing they always tell us at the end of the seminar is, I wish I had done this, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, one day. And the one day is not in a diary. If I open up my calendar, my diary, there's no one day there.
There's Monday and Tuesday.
Exactly, Monday, Tuesday. There's no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, one day. Where's one day? And it's a delusional belief that we build in. And I think because I've been in front of so many people over the years, I've become a lot more direct. Even in the years you've known me, I've become a lot more direct with my audiences, because I just, having seen my mum work herself to the bone and still have to bring three of us up, there was myself and my two brothers, I followed a conventional route. I did the good Asian thing. I got myself a degree. I studied half with a PhD. I then became a consultant, which is how I ended up passing through Singapore all those years ago, occasionally to go in, and because there's a lot of construction going on. So my background is civil engineering construction.
Yeah, I know you're one of the top few in the world, isn't it? In the
thank you. There was only a small group of us, 4 or 5 of us, and we every time there was a problem, I was shortlisted, and I've just been messaging with a good colleague of mine that's still in the profession, and he's pretty much the number one now, and that's where I would be if I'd stayed in that profession. And this is a challenge. I remember a conversation with you, Daniel, some years ago, where we got to a point where the portfolio was growing, and I remember watching and seeing your cash flow grow. And you had this conversation where I think one of your fellow colleagues that you'd worked with had acquired quite a high level in the military, and it was a bit of a coach conversation where I was relaying my experience of that with my friend that got to the top of his profession.
That's
And
right.
there was still that emotional tug. Should I still, should I have stayed in that profession? Maybe we
Yeah.
could share that, because that's part of this journey from born poor to die rich. Is we
Mm,
have to make decisions that may move us away from an emotional connection with someone. In other words, what you do is not who you are. I think that's the point I want to make. Would you agree
it's
with that?
true. Yeah, that's so true. But I think it also takes that personal journey, because I mean, like I shared earlier in Asia, a lot of people pour themselves so much into their work that their profession almost becomes their life. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you do get a lot of tangible rewards in terms of benefits. And in the military, you wear your rank on your uniform and things like that.
Right.
And you generally are doing good work. But the scary thing is, as a lot of people are doing this good work for their organizations or for whatever cause they believe in, very often back home in terms of their financial management, how are they planning for their future, for their kids, often is overlooked. And I know people who are financial advisors who, they're very good at very busy managing everybody else's finances, but in private they share with me, hey Daniel, no, I wish I too can create some passive income. And I think that was a
Yeah.
huge wake up call for me that you can be very good at building or doing things for your organization, but I think it reaches a point in your life where, especially I think when you have children, you start to think, how could I set them up for success? How can I leave a legacy for them? And I think I was really
Yeah.
excited about this call because the time is really here
It
where
is.
passive income really helps us to gain a lot more security. You're not so stressed about losing your job. And I don't know if I think I didn't have a chance to share with you. A friend of mine in her early 30s actually got made redundant just a few weeks ago. So it's not even those that are in the 40s or
And
50s.
she's in a good profession, I'm assuming. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's an accountant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And this is happening right now in the UK. So I mean, there's a good bridge into what's happening with COVID and the recession. So I mean, for those of you watching, I think the way it's important to differentiate between COVID-19 and the global recession. My personal view is COVID has simply just been a catalyst to what was already happening.
yeah,
So you and I have talked about this for some time, Daniel, which is why I know the investment strategy that you focus on, for example, in the United Kingdom, is very much around long-term contracts where there's a guaranteed rent from government-based income. Correct?
yeah, that's correct.
Uh,
Yeah,
and
we've been
that
looking.
it's
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go on. So that income is different to, say, having tenants who are in a job. And I want to talk very briefly about this while on the call today, because a lot of people are saying to me, "Oh, but surely there's a risk with real estate, because what if somebody can't work?" And I think it's important that we pick that. That I'll make a note. We pick that subject up before we finish the call,
Sure.
because actually there are mechanisms in place to protect that.
Yeah,
And there's two ways to do it. There's a government mechanism which protects you because they're already taking action here to
yeah.
give holiday periods to landlords. But another way to do it, which is what you've been doing, and I've done this myself, is to proactively put a strategy in place that ensures a guaranteed income for 3, 5, 7 years, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, just on that note, I was wanting to ask you whether you'll be so kind over the next number of weeks, if you could just spend, say, 5 or 10 minutes with us every week. We go through a few different topics on born poor die rich. How do we help people be wealthy in different areas of their life? Would that
Yeah,
be
I mean, well,
possible?
to be frank with you, we've got a holiday period right now because we're literally so the schools have closed down in the United Kingdom. I suspect we're going to go into lockdown at some point, which will mean that apart from critical going out to shop and medical, etc., we may have a period of 2 or 3 weeks where people are restricted to what they can do. So that means I'm going to be either at home or possibly here in the office.
Okay.
And I actually think you've done the right thing. Is that getting us together? There's a lot of chemistry between us anyway, and without, I know everybody's here and you're listening to me, and there's an age gap between Daniel and I, but he has a huge amount of wisdom, and he's done a lot of personal development over the years. I've seen that. I've seen him build his business, and very smart when it comes to money management, time management, and coaching. I've seen him coach tens of people over these last few years, just to help their mindset shift. And if
Yeah.
you're watching this and you haven't worked with him and you're in a situation where you might need that support, just reach out to him, because I know at the moment there's a few people have asked me, actually, does Daniel have any availability? But they can come talk to you. Not that
Yeah.
I'm trying to plug you, but I just want to get people to be aware of the relationship that I have with Daniel. So for
Mm,
me, I think this is a really important space we need to be talking into. And I actually I'm happy to be reaching into the Asian market,
yeah.
because partly because of my heritage there and my relationship with you, but also when I was there over the last 10 years, and I'll be very candid if that's okay.
Of
I
course,
think
yeah.
there has been a work ethic to the point where young children, young teenagers are under immense pressure. And
Absolutely.
my last event in Singapore, there were several parents that confessed to me that their children had been going into emotional, almost like a form of depression. Some have actually tried to self-harm themselves because the pressures on the kids, and the same thing's happening here, by the way, as well. But I see it more over in Asia.
Yeah.
Japan, probably one of the toughest, actually. The
Mm.
mortality rate in Japan in terms of the workspace is really high at the moment, with people
Yeah.
literally overworking. But our kids are being put under immense pressure to get to a certain standard to be able to achieve a certain level in the corporate profession. And
Yeah.
we just got to be mindful of that. I think there is a global thing right now where we have to address
Mm.
how we get that balance back, and
Yeah.
are we as parents, because of our striving to succeed and be, put a label on our profession at a certain level, are we putting too much pressure on our kids? And I think it's
Yeah.
a topic for another day, but
Absolutely.
I mean, tell me if I'm off the mark here, but I do sense that's been a growing thing over in Asia over these last 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In Singapore, we even have a name for it. We call it kiasu, which is you're
Kiasu.
scared. Kiasu, yes,
Kiasu.
Kiasu, yeah, which is you're scared
Kiasu.
to lose. So
Right.
you're always competing, and subconsciously, the parents are competing to see if my kids are doing better in their examinations, and
Right.
the other is kiasi, which is
Kiasi.
just you're scared to die. So
Oh
I mean,
wow.
the COVID situation, everybody, there's a lot of things that are happening out of fear. But I think one thing that you and I are passionate about is how can we act out of love? How can we do things, and especially people are working from home. How could a good opportunity in the crisis could be to spend quality time with the children, having good boundaries around work,
Yeah.
and then also spending time with them in the evening.
And that actually, I mean, I heard parents the other day saying, what are we going to do? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, that just shows you we have become so conditioned to spend 7, 8, 9, 10 hours away from our kids working that when we're with them, we tend to do quick things, adventurous things. Very rarely do we just have moments of presence where we sit
Yeah.
down and spend time maybe talking about the philosophy of life and what's happening around. I've done some posts over in the UK here. I can't even remember what, you probably know it better than I do. I think it's at Dr. Row W or something. If you go and look me up online, you'll see some of the posts I've been doing recently. Maybe you can put it
Yes.
at the bottom of this to help
Sure.
them. But there
Yeah.
are several posts there, and some of them are to do with parenting and managing your mind and your time. And I'd like to maybe bring that message over to some of the stuff that we do as well, Daniel.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I'll
if they
share
want to
with you.
go, if they want to go look at that separately, I've got some stuff for the parents that are watching this actually.
That's great. Dr. Rowe is big in Instagram, as well as he has a Facebook page. I'll drop the links later. If you have questions, comments, I think the next few weeks, as we have him live as a guest, it will be a great opportunity. And I think people pay literally thousands of dollars just to sit down and have this, have time with him. And I mean, he's been so gracious of his time. I'm mindful of his time. Maybe, Dr. Rowe, share with us some thoughts as we wrap up, over the next 2-3 minutes. What are some pieces of advice? What are some things people could start to take action on?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we can do a little bit longer than a couple of minutes, I think it'd be quite good actually just to
Sure.
recap where we're at. So COVID-19 is global now, as we know, and you've experienced it before we have. So you're ahead of the game in terms of how that's being managed. But there's two things here. There's managing what's happening. We're going to have to deal with it here in the United Kingdom, and the mortality rates will be affected, which is tragic, unless people learn to manage that, which I think you've done very well over in Singapore, from what I've understood talking to you and looking at the news. But there's another thing here. I think the message I want to get across to everybody watching is the landscape has changed. It has permanently changed. I don't care what anybody says. We get very busy, and normally when there's a bit of a blip, we had SARS, if you remember, and there's all these different things. Brexit, we like to talk about Brexit, global economy, etc. We have these kind of ups and downs, and then people get back into this status quo where they just carry on. I don't think that's going to be the same this time. I think there's been such a global emotional connection with this that working environments will change. Events, I'm in the events business, as are you, I know, to some extent. We were planning to come over and do something together over there in Singapore. That's going to change. I don't think it's going to stop, but I think people will be more mindful. But the working environment is going to change. And I think for the first time, those of you that are professionals, whether you're lawyers, doctors, accountants, whatever your profession is over in Singapore, start to think carefully about, what do I do next? Because if you don't have security now, the time is to start to build it, and it's never too late. I mean, Daniel, the oldest person I taught was 92 years of age in the United Kingdom. He actually asked.
Seriously.
Yes, 92. My last event, we had a 67-year-old lady, we had a 64-year-old gentleman there. we had a lot of people in their 40s and 50s. It's never
Mm.
really, it is never too late. The 92-year-old man, I haven't got one here, but he asked to
Yeah.
have the microphone, and he said, Dr. Rowe, Dr. Rowe, he said, can I borrow the microphone? He said, listen, I'm 92 and you don't understand. I need to do this quickly. Can I have one of those mental people you've been talking about? And I've been talking about mentors, the importance of having a mentor in your
Right.
life. He said, can I have one of those mental people? Maybe mentors are mental, I don't know. My
Because I
point
think
is
he realizes that he's, time is running out, isn't it? And he needs to do it
time.
fast. And
Yeah,
the
and we
scary thing
have to
is that
watch. We have to
the
watch
time
time.
just passes by, isn't it? I think, we're just both so passionate about this topic because even in the workplace, I see people, year after year, they're either comparing, oh, have I get promoted? They're just chasing after the next important project or promotion, and before you know it, a year has passed. 10 years have passed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think people can relate to that, right? Whenever you think of New Year resolutions, and we're now in March, 3 months of 2020 have passed.
Correct. But we don't have the celebration of an end of the year. What we've now got to celebrate the fact that we're going through a transformation, but
Yeah.
also, for a lot of us, maybe mourning the loss of friends or the check. I mean, jobs. People are literally losing jobs, just like that. Major corporations. Virgin had just announced just recently. You might have heard 7.5 billion bailout they want from the British government. And some of the major corporations here are struggling. So the people that were previously, for example, coming through the real estate seminars here saying, I don't need this, I'm in a good job, they're probably thinking, shit, I should have done what that guy was telling me about 5 years ago and built that security in place. And it's not about having millions of pounds, it's about just having that. Being rich at some point is having the time to be able to go, I can have a month off or 2 months off, or I can't work for the next 3 months, but I've got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 pounds a month or dollars a month coming in. It's just having something that provides that passive security. So if you're watching this right now and this is all new to you, then I would recommend you start to study this. Keep an eye on what Daniel's doing over there. Listen to what he's posting about. Eventually, I'd like to come over and maybe talk on the subject over there with you, Daniel.
That would be
But for
great.
now, we can do this live. But don't be afraid to study. This is a time for study. For many people, it's a time to pause. Switch the TV off in the evenings. I'm saying to a lot of people over here in the United Kingdom, you switch the TV off and start putting interviews like this on and start to listen to the people that are out there that have got an emotional wisdom that you feel connected with. If you don't relate to me, then maybe you relate to Daniel. That's fine. This is not about ego. It's not about impressing anybody. And I always say that, everybody relates to people differently, but take the time to grow, because I think at the moment, what this is doing is it's asking us to reflect on three things. One is our personal development. In other words, how can we grow? Two is our health. What are we doing to keep our immune system up? Because with COVID, what we've become very clear on now from what the doctors are telling us and the research is anyone with a low immune system will definitely be affected by it. But COVID aside for a minute, we can't be naive enough as a global culture to assume this is the last time it's going to happen. I think this is the sign of things to happen. So I do, and you and I have talked about this for years now, is getting that immune system back up. It's been a passion of mine since my mum got cancer in 2002, is what can I do to improve my immune system to keep my body in an emotionally strong state. So that's the second thing. And the third thing for those of you who are watching is finances. I think that's the other big wake-up call. So one is personal emotional development. Second one is health. How do we start to work on? Maybe we can talk about this subject over the next couple of weeks. I can't give advice, but I can talk about what I help people do from all the experience I've had over the years. And the third thing, of course, is finances, which is where Born Poor, Die Rich comes in. Which is actually, how can I look to create, instead of my immune system on a health level, how can I build up a financial immune system? What bricks can I put in place to keep the negative financial situation at bay? It's knocking on the door, loss of job, economy changing, global recession, banks changing their rules about lending, business can't give you as much money. That's all banging through the door, trying to break through the wall. What if we can put bricks in place to build that up? And that's about strategy. Sorry,
it's great that
you're
it's great you're saying that. I was just talking to this on I love the three things that you mentioned. Firstly, having time to basically study. If
grow,
people study about want to do law or be a doctor, and we hear in Italy people are graduating their doctors without their exams just to fill the system. But I mean, the point in this is they spend many years in order to be qualified as a doctor. But when it comes to investments or in property, people think they just go out there and do it. I mean, there's no wonder why some people struggle with it. The second thing you mentioned was health, and the third thing is about finances. And I think just bringing this to a close, it sounds like we've both been really passionate about how people are working so hard, but not necessarily. They might be very busy, but not necessarily very productive. And one of the people I'm coaching, thanks for sharing about the coaching. Actually, in March, I'm booked up. But I just had a coaching call yesterday where we were working through exactly as you mentioned. How do you build bricks? And different people might be in different steps in their financial journey. And one great step was just doing an expense audit that we took them through. And he realized that he could save over $1,000 over a year. And the scary thing is, he could, this is money that he wasn't even aware that he was paying out. And he was going to continue to do that over the next 10 years. Can you imagine just the impact of that?
So if you could save him across different areas of his life, another 10 to 15,000, we know, for example, in the United Kingdom, that could go towards an investment, a property, and create a cash flow. So I think it's saving money in one area, which is brilliant, and then it's learning other areas to generate money. I'm conscious of time now, but I'm going to put a challenge to you, Daniel. What about you pop out and do a live over the next 2 or 3 days for your listeners on maybe some key strategies that exist for creating cash flow? Keep it simple, just for cash flow in properties. And then maybe off the back of that, you and I can talk about it, and you can pick my brains sometime into next week. So we can do a bit of a leapfrog to give them some insights.
Okay.
Because I think this is a good space to talk about it, because they might be watching me thinking, well, that's all right, Dr. O, but what are the strategies we can do? You talked about the 3 things and money, there's lots of strategies, but what are they? Maybe if you could talk a bit into that space, Daniel, to give them some insight, and then I can come back off the back of that, and then you can ask me some deeper questions on the subject.
Right.
I think that would be worth doing. The other quick thing to do to let you know is I can't guarantee this at the moment, but I have a time management program which helps people get that balance back in their lives, dealing with time and dealing with how they basically coordinate their life to be able to create wealth and be in a job and be a parent and manage their lives as well. Now, I think you may have even seen this program. Normally we would charge for that, but because of what's happening globally, we're just internally with my team looking just to release it to make it free to people.
Wow.
When I get the thumbs up from that, maybe I'll let you know, and we could do 5-10 minutes on it, and then I'm gonna give a link to it for anyone over in Asia that wants to take advantage of that as well.
That's great. I know you're part of this. You're leading this community called the Growth Tribe. Is it?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah,
yes,
and I think there's lots of great content, a great supportive community, a podcast as well on Spotify and iTunes. Some really good, and I love how you guys are so relevant with the times. And I've listened to quite a number of those podcasts. Always come away inspired by both yourself and Harms, and I think it's great. Where all of this is really putting it out there. I mean, you asked me earlier that it might be difficult for me to come onto this space. I mean, to just share something like this online, you just asked me, say, 5 years, or even 3 years ago, it's like, no way. But I think it came to a point when I realized two incidents that are really in my mind. One is I spoke to a friend, and he was 50,000 in credit card debt. And he's a close friend of mine. And I was like, gosh, if only I spoke to him a year earlier, maybe it wouldn't be such a situation. The second one is colleagues who have reached a certain level in the career, and they've taken some retirement benefits, some of them to the tune of $500,000. And then in 1 or 2 years, they might either invest it in stocks or invest it in an F&B. And in 1 year, everything is gone. And I was like, oh man, I wish, I had an opportunity to share that with them. So, I mean, that's really on my heart. How can we help these people achieve wealth in different areas of their life instead of executing a wrong strategy?
And I think Daniel's spot on. If you're watching this and you don't know Daniel at all, but maybe you've followed him as a friend, or possibly you've started to watch this, I know I'm coming on as a guest. We've known each other for a long time, but your growth has been immense. And Daniel's very humble. For example, he won't tell you that one of the assets he's got in the UK is probably valued at over 1 million pounds. But equally, there's smaller deals I know you've done over there that are sort of a couple of $100,000 that cash flow. So someone like Daniel won't talk about that in the open space, but I can say that on his behalf, to know that if anyone's going, well, does he really own property? I can vouch for it. He definitely does. And I've seen the cash flow on those properties as well. And the important thing is that he has approached this, and this is my observation of you, Daniel, that when I met you, there was very much this focus on creating the passive income. But the journey, I've noticed you changed. So now your vision is, yes, keep building the portfolio, but actually taking this wisdom and sharing it with other people, which I don't think is where you were at when I first met you. It's more about survival, wasn't it? It was about
Yeah.
having you're earning a good income, the two of you, but how can I create something that allows me the time to then be able to give beyond myself? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also about after helping my family get that time freedom, it's also to look at other people who are still working as hard, but at the same time
Right.
I know on the weekends they are really passionate about their kids, about their parents. I say either wanting to be good parents or wanting to spend time with their own parents. And I think it's just being able to have that flexibility or life choices. And for you and I who have walked this journey, to us it's like, okay, it's I would say it's simple. It's not easy
It's
where
not
you
easy.
can just do this
No, we've had a
tomorrow.
lot of
Yeah.
challenges individually, and
Yeah.
some of the things we've done together as well. But that's the part of the journey.
Mm.
I think the other
But at
thing
the
you
same time,
mentioned,
there is a clear path that, just looking at the resources some people have, they could be financially free in some years down the road if they had put their mind, like you
yeah,
said, to study, move in the right directions instead of making mistakes. Because you might have one or two investment pots, but if you do a bad investment with it, and then how many years of hard work is that? So I think
yeah.
it's so important to really get into the space where people who have been there and done that, so that it just accelerates the progress to get to where you want to go to.
I agree. I think just to wrap that off is to say that look, we're in the middle of a storm here. So imagine we're in the middle of a tornado, and around us is COVID-19. But beyond the tornado, outside of that sphere of this going on, there is clarity. The beautiful lake beyond the tornado is still there. The mountains are still there. The trees are still there. And that is your future, those of you watching. That's the future with your children, your kids. So part of the born poor, die rich process, right at the start of the process that we work through with people is, let's start with what that vision looks like, because most people are drowning in their circumstances and all like, but you don't understand, Dr. Rohan, you don't understand, Daniel, this is where I'm at. Okay, I understand that, but stop for a minute and pause. Let's look beyond that. Let's look outside the tornado. Well, how does that look? Now, if we can create that image, then we can navigate a path through the tornado, and that's the process. And we can start that process over these coming weeks. If you want to drag me on and ask me questions, we can do that.
That's great.
So it's
I
the
know we
vision
can go.
first.
As whoever's listening to this, we are really passionate about this. We can go on and on. We could talk the whole day, whole night about this. Share with us your comments. What particularly resonated with you? Questions that you want answered. Things that you want us to share more about. As we wrap up, I just want to say that I love the image that Dr. Rowe was just sharing about the lake that is beyond the whole tornado. And
Yes.
I think that really is that purpose. Whatever you want to be wealthy in your life, what does that lake mean or represent to you? It could be time with your family. It could be having, just more freedom where you can. I know I speak to some entrepreneurs. They say, if only I could choose my clients. Some clients are just so difficult. And to them that might be that lake to them. And just to wrap up, I think the message we want to share is one of hope, one of courage. That even though times are difficult, we actually don't realize how strong we really are within. As long as I think what's important is gaining clarity on what that purpose is. Out of the tornado, what is it that keeps us going strong and keeps us alive, so that we can do better and better each day.
Beautiful summary.
Great. And I think a last word in Chinese, for danger or crisis, as we call it, wei ji. It is danger and also opportunity. So in every crisis, in every danger, there's always an opportunity. And I remember something that Dr. Rowe shared with me years back, that something Warren Buffett said, that when people are fearful, it's time to be greedy. But I think it's not so much greedy in the sense where we are fueled with greed, but I think it's time for prudence, where we want to study hard, we want to get ourselves associated with people that know what they're talking about, and not just trying to get in the space, but actually that they have no substance, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
Be greedy for knowledge. Be greedy for emotional development. Be greedy to fill your body up and your mind up and your heart up and your soul up with the goodness that's out there. Because a lot of people are focusing on the badness, the fear, and that's where the fear, they soak up that. We need to soak up a wholly different experience.
Absolutely.
And tune in to the people around you that are resonating with a higher level of frequency, because that's how we elevate our consciousness.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Rowe. I love what you said about the TV. Actually, Joanna and I and the kids just last year we removed the last TV in the home that we don't watch anymore. So there's no
Brilliant.
TV in the house. And I mean, for anyone watching this, I'm sure that the last 20, 30 minutes or so has been much better, educational, and inspirational than anything that you can find on TV. So stay tuned. There'll be more coming. Thank you, Dr. Rowe, for agreeing to join us, and we'll join you all again soon. So in the meantime, like this page, subscribe to this page if you haven't already, follow us on our social media, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.